Sonic the Hedgehog 3A is a 1994 platform game developed and published by Sega for the Genesis. Like previous Sonic games, players traverse side-scrolling levels while collecting rings and defeating enemies. They control Sonic and Tails, who attempt to retrieve the Chaos Emeralds to stop Dr. Robotnik from relaunching his space station, the Death Egg, after it crash lands on a mysterious floating island. Sonic 3 introduces Knuckles the Echidna, the island guardian, who lays traps for Sonic and Tails. Development began in January 1993 by Sega Technical Institute in California, shortly after the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It was initially developed as an isometric game similar to what would eventually become Sonic 3D Blast, 1996, but became a conventional 2D platform game due to time constraints. Sonic 3 was developed simultaneously with Sonic and Knuckles. They were planned as a single game until time constraints and cartridge costs forced the developers to split it. The Sonic 3 cartridge can be attached to an adapter on the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge, creating a combined game, Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Michael Jackson composed portions of the soundtrack, but left the project and went uncredited. Sources vary on how much of his work was retained, and many tracks were replaced in re-releases. Sonic 3 was released in North America and Europe in February 1994, and in Japan in May. As with its predecessors, it was a critical and commercial success, with critics seeing it as an improvement over previous installments. Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles sold a combined 4 million copies worldwide, placing them among the best-selling Genesis games. They have been re-released in various Sega and Sonic compilations. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is a 2D side-scrolling platformer. As with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, players can control Sonic, Tails, or both simultaneously. In the former choice, players control Sonic while Tails runs along beside him. A second player can join at any time and control Tails separately. Sonic 3 adds the ability for Tails to fly for a short time by spinning his twin tails like a helicopter rotor. Unlike Sonic, Tails can also swim underwater. Sonic 3 takes place over 6 zones, each divided into 2 acts. Levels are populated with badniks, robots created by the villain, Dr. Robotnik. Sonic and Tails can defeat them by jumping on them or using the spin dash attack, which also gives the character a speed boost. The levels include obstacles and other features such as vertical loops, corkscrews, breakable walls, spikes, water that the player can drown in, and bottomless pits. There is a mini-boss fight with one of Robotnik's large, powerful robots at the end of the first act of each level and a boss fight with Robotnik at the end of the second. Reaching a new level saves the game to one of 6 save slots. As with previous Sonic games, Sonic 3 uses rings, scattered throughout the levels, as a health system. When the player is attacked without rings, is crushed, falls off-screen, drowns, or exceeds the act's 10-minute limit, they lose a life and return to the most recently passed checkpoint. Dying with 0 lives gives the player a game over. The levels also include power-ups in television monitors that, when hit, grant the character an extra life, temporary invincibility to most hazards, a number of rings, a shield that allows them to breathe underwater, a shield that allows them to withstand fire from enemy projectiles, or a shield that attracts nearby rings. Sonic 3 contains 2 types of special stages. When the player collects at least 50 rings and passes a checkpoint, they can warp to the first type, which involves bouncing up a gumball machine-like corridor to earn power-ups by hitting a switch. Both sides of the corridor are lined with flippers, which disappear when the character bounces on them, and the switch drops when both flippers supporting it are removed. The corridor's floor contains a bounce pad, which also disappears after one use. Falling afterwards causes the player to leave the stage with the most recent power-up collected. The second type, triggered by entering giant rings found in secret passages, involves running around a 3D map and passing through all of a number of blue spheres arranged in patterns. Passing through a blue sphere turns it red, and touching a red sphere causes the player to leave the stage, unless the player has just completed a cycle around an arrangement of blue spheres, in which case all of these spheres turn to harmless rings. Removing all of the blue spheres gives the player a Chaos Emerald. If Sonic, not Tails, collects all 7, he unlocks the ability to become Super Sonic, which makes him invincible to most obstacles. 8, 11. Failing to collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds triggers a post-credits scene in which Robotnik and Knuckles taunt the player. 12. Sonic 3 includes a competitive mode. 2 players, controlling Sonic, Tails, or Knuckles, race through one or all of 5 stages that do not appear in the main game. In these same stages, a single player can compete against the clock in time attacks. After Sonic and Tails defeat Dr. Robotnik in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Robotnik's space station, the Death Egg, crash lands on the floating Angel Island. The impact from the Death Egg's crash causes the island to fall into the ocean. There, Robotnik meets Knuckles the Echidna, the last member of an ancient Echidna civilization that once inhabited the island. Knuckles is the guardian of the Master Emerald, which grants the island its levitation power and has an equal power level of the 7 Chaos Emeralds. Robotnik dupes Knuckles into believing Sonic is trying to steal the Master Emerald, and that the launch base is Sonic's base, turning the two against each other while he repairs the Death Egg. Sonic and Tails approach Angel Island in their biplane, the Tornado. Sonic uses the Chaos Emeralds to transform into Super Sonic, but Knuckles ambushes him and steals the emeralds. Sonic and Tails travel the island hindered by Knuckles and Robotnik. 18. At the launch base, where the Death Egg is under repair, Sonic and Tails fight Knuckles, but the Death Egg relaunches. On a platform attached to the Death Egg, they defeat Robotnik, causing the Death Egg to crash land on Angel Island again. The story resumes in Sonic and Knuckles. Like Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was developed in California by Sega Technical Institute, STI. After the completion of Sonic 2, STI split into 2 teams, one comprised Japanese developers, who worked on Sonic 3, and the other Americans, who worked on Sonic Spinball. Yuji Naka and Hirokazu Yasuhara were the primary creators of the Sonic 3 design document and project schedule. Naka selected the majority of the team, while STI director Roger Hector oversaw development, and Pamela Kelly led the marketing. Development began in January 1993. The team initially used the Sega Virtua processor chip, allowing for 3D graphics. They created a prototype with isometric graphics with the working title Sonic 3D. The original special stage featured a polygonal Sonic in a figure 8-shaped stage. When it became apparent that the chip would not be finished by 1994, Sonic 3 was restarted as a more conventional 2D platform game. The designer Takashi Iizuka said the chip was an experiment to see if Sonic could work in 3D, and was abandoned due to its low polygon count. The isometric concept was eventually used for Sonic 3D Blast in 1996. According to Naka, the team wanted a deeper story to expand the Sonic world, which greatly expanded the project size. As Sonic was an action game with international appeal, they told the story visually, using in-game cutscenes, instead of text. The levels are triple the size of those in Sonic 2. Additional bosses, different musical arrangements and graphics were used to distinguish Act 1 and 2 of each stage. Many elements were conceived during the development of Sonic 2 but deferred to Sonic 3. Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles were originally planned as a single game. However, the manufacturing costs of a 34 megabit cartridge with NVRAM would have been prohibitively expensive. Due to the game's scope and Sega of America's commitment to launch a major McDonald's Happy Meal promotion in February 1994, the team reluctantly split it in half, allowing more time to develop the second part and splitting the cost between 2 cartridges. The Sonic and Knuckles cartridge's lock-on technology was created, named and implemented so Sonic 3 could be experienced as intended. Among other features, it allowed the developers to keep the paths designed for Knuckles in Sonic 3, which were inaccessible on the standalone cartridge. Sonic 3 features the debut of Sonic's rival, Knuckles the Echidna. Many designs for the character were considered Wink with a Frown 33. For the final design, Takashi Yuda chose the kind of animal, and Pamela Kelly chose the name. 34, Yuta envisioned him as a supporting character for Sonic and felt he would make a good playable character. 35, whereas Sonic symbolizes speed, Knuckles symbolizes power. 29, and the emphasis of the character was to break walls. 36, his shoe coloration was inspired by Jamaica's flag. 29, the original name for the character was Dreads, referring to his dreadlocks. 37, the design was tested with focus groups of American children. 26, Knuckles' climbing ability allowed the developers to introduce more vertical gameplay. 27. Hector said Sonic 3 had a troubled development. He recalled having to prevent the rest of Sega from bothering the team while simultaneously making sure the game would be finished in time. Additionally, Hector struggled to balance resources between Sonic 3 and other projects. Naka was sometimes seen as a harsh leader, and American STI staff not on the Sonic 3 team became jealous of the priority given to the game. What the heck happened to the Hedgehog? There was a time when Sonic was a wholly reliable mascot, consistently fun, always dependable. But recent years have seen none of that reliability, as game after game with the Hedgehog's name have come along and tarnished any positive reputation he may have ever had. We've suffered through Shadow and his worthless guns, an attempt to take away his natural speed and replace it with hoverboard riding, and even the woeful franchise reboot that failed to live up to anyone's expectations. It's just a pain to put any faith at all in any new Sonic product that's announced or developed anymore, as you'll just be setting yourself up for disappointment. Why can't we just revisit the days when Sonic meant quality, and fun, and running really fast to the right side of the screen? Well, we can. Put aside any sideways focus on today's Sonic misfires and use the Virtual Console to experience yesteryear's surefire hits, including, now, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. In sharp contrast to the Sonic we know today, whose games seem to be getting consistently worse and worse over time, the opposite was true in the Genesis era. The first Sonic game established a solid, satisfying, super speedy experience. The second refined the formula, and added even more to the mix. And the third title, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, completed the trilogy as the best of them all. Sonic 3 finds our hero and his sidekick Tails landing on the mystical Angel Island, where Dr. Robotnik is once again up to no good. But the Doc isn't the first foe to get in Sonic's face. This time it's the Red Echidna Knuckles, introduced in this game's opening sequence for the very first time. Knuckles knocks Sonic for a loop, steals his stash of Chaos Emeralds, and quickly runs away. Sonic and Tails quest to chase Knuckles down, and foil Dr. Robotnik's latest plot along the way, is the central focus of this adventure. And it's a focus that stays in focus, as Sonic 3 uses cutscenes and interstitial appearances by Knuckles throughout the game. The enhanced sense of solid transition is an upgrade here over previous Sonic titles. Rather than just fading to black after each stage is completed, the action just keeps going. Every area is connected to the last, and that makes things feel much more cohesive. You'll want to fully explore each of these interconnected stages in turn, and some enhancements to the basic Sonic gameplay facilitate just that. Sonic has new access to some enhanced jumping techniques when he's equipped with shields this time around, and Tails can finally fly under his own power. Players adventuring alone can control either character, or two players can join in together and simultaneously run and jump through each level. Tails can even pick up Sonic and give him a helicopter boost in that mode. Further multiplayer options are available through the competition menu, which splits the screen horizontally just like Sonic 2 and gives you the choice to face a friend in head-to-head racing, or to challenge the clock in time trial mode. And the 3D bonus rounds Sonic 2 introduced seem to have inspired a similar side game here, as well, as collecting Chaos Emeralds during the adventure takes place on a three-dimensional, rotating plane populated by blue orbs. Touch all the orbs without hitting a red one to win an emerald, get all 7 to unlock a better ending at the adventure's end. All of these features are over and above the standard Sonic the Hedgehog gameplay, which is fast and frantic platforming/running action, as before. But the considerable praise lavished on Sonic 3 can't come without some criticism, and that falls to this title's interaction with the next game in the series, Sonic and Knuckles. Sonic and Knuckles came out on the Genesis in the same year as Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and its content was originally meant to be a part of the third game. SNK shipped as a lock-on cartridge, so players could snap their Sonic 3 carts into the top of it and access the excised levels and features. How this same functionality could be recreated on the Virtual Console, which has no physical media to work with, is a question that's still up in the air. It's possible that a software solution could recognize if you have downloaded both Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles in the future, and give you access to the Sonic 3 and Knuckles content, but that's really just speculation. You may end up being left with just half a game in both cases. Sonic 1 we called impressive. Sonic 2 we labeled great. Sonic 3, though, is the best of them all, and deservingly earns the highest score of the trilogy. But we recognize that the issue of its connection to the so far unreleased Sonic and Knuckles is a point of contention, and it may make even serious fans want to wait a while before investing 800 Wii points here. If that's you, we understand. But we're going to give Sonic the benefit of the doubt this time and stand by the quality of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, even as a standalone game. Because compared to the trash he's been involved in lately, just Sonic 3 alone is pure gaming gold.